The Yashicamat 124G is based on one of the common body styles in TLRs. It holds a roll of film between two fixed points that are part of the frame of the camera. These two knobs on the left side are spring-loaded anchors for locking the roll of film into position inside the camera. Film loading in 120mm can be done in subdued light. That is, ordinary room lighting would be okay, but not the bright light of direct sunshine. We'll cover the basic loading procedure, unloading procedure, and some tips and checks for switching between 120 and 220 films along the way. Turn the camera so that you can see the bottom side. There's a large knob that works a simple latch against the front face of the camera. Turn the knob in the direction of O for open. When you close up the camera, you'll do the opposite. With a latch open, we simply swing the door of the camera upwards. We see a common situation. The previous user has left an empty spool of film in the camera. This spool is from the roll that was loaded last. We will transfer this empty spool to the take-up reel and use it to wind up our film as it is exposed frame by frame. To remove the old spool, we pull and turn the film anchoring knob on the outside of the camera. With the spool knob out of the way, the spool can be pulled out. Notice how the spool tips one end into the fixture first, instead of dropping straight in like a 35mm canister. We pull the spool knob out on the upper take-up side and tip the spool in. When we see that it's close to being in the correct position, we can release the tension on the film spool knob and make sure everything drops into place. We check the pressure plate on the back of the camera and make sure that it says 12 exposures, because we're about to load 120 film in a 6x6 camera. The position of this pressure plate also sets a reminder window on the outside of the camera near the film advance crank. Now we get ready to load our roll of film. The roll of film comes in a box like these. Inside that box is a foil packet. Sometimes film is sold only in these foil packets. As we open that packet, we have to be careful to basically protect the film. We open the foil, pull out the roll of film. The roll of film will be sealed with a short tab of paper. Undo this paper and discard it. The free running end of the film assembly is paper at this end. There'll be a strip of paper several inches long. In 120mm, it's unlikely that our fingers will ever touch the film during the loading procedure. The free end of the film assembly is usually held in place with a tiny dot of glue. Keep control of the paper. We don't want the film to come unwound in the light. Using the spool seating technique that we went over earlier, so we transferred the empty spool, we seat this spool in the film bay. With the anchoring studs in place, we can peel the free end of the film loose. We pull off a small amount and feed the tab into this slot along the axis of the take-up spool. We turn the crank on this model to advance the film. We will not need to advance it very far. On the film's backing paper, there will be an alignment arrow printed. These arrows occur at standard distance down the backing paper. We match up that arrow with the mark the manufacturer has provided on the body of our camera. Once these marks are aligned, we can stop advancing the film. If we go beyond that mark, we'll want to avoid exceeding that mark by more than a few millimeters. If we overshoot the mark, the worst thing that's likely to happen is that we'll run out of film sooner, or we'll have an incomplete final frame. Notice also, near the unexposed film bay, there are two marks on the camera. One is red and the other is green. These marks are used to show that a film has been advanced to the correct point during loading. Since we will load 120 film in this example, we will use the green mark, which is closest to the spool. To load 220 film in the camera instead, the only difference in our procedure would be to change the pressure plate position and to use the 220 mark for alignment. With the film advanced to the correct mark, we can close the door of the Yashicamat and latch it shut. We rotate the door latch towards C for closed and check the front of the camera. The door latch has a bar-like projection, and on that bar there's a small hole. This hole should catch a tiny stud on the front of the camera. If the stud is not held by the latch, the door is not locked closed properly. With the film inside the camera, we only have to trip the shutter and turn the crank until the number 1 appears in the film counter. Then we're ready to make our exposure with the camera. When it's time to unload the camera, the procedure is simple. We provide a few extra windings on the film advance crank to make sure the loose end of the film has cleared the film chamber. A roller with a spring will help to hold the loose end of the film against the spool. We open the back of the camera and use the film anchor knob to free the exposed spool. Most manufacturers provide a small tab of paper at the exposed end of their paper backing. The adhesive on this tab can be activated by wetting it. We can lick it just like the glue on an envelope, and use it to tape shut the free end of the roll film assembly. We then store the film in a safe place and can load the next roll. That's it. Loading film into a medium format 6x6 Yashicamat is easy, and with a little practice you'll be able to do it without thinking much about it.